The Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation proudly presents a celebration of reading, made possible through the generosity of KPRC2, Phillips 66, Woodside Energy, and our many local supporters. Featuring authors Nate Bargatze, H.W. Brands, Katherine Center, Kelsey Grammer, and Victoria Christopher Murray, with a performance by the Texas A&M Singing Cadets. Now, please welcome the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush, and First Lady, Mrs. Laura Bush.
Good evening, and welcome to a celebration of reading. As a former teacher and librarian, I'm happy to kick off tonight's program. Nothing is more valuable or rewarding than cuddling up and reading a good book together as a family. And that's why the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation's efforts to promote family and childhood literacy are so important.
Mother believed reading was essential to personal success and the vitality of our nation. She dedicated much of her life to ensuring that more children and adults could read, write, and comprehend. This year would have been Mom's 100th birthday, and we're honoring her by carrying on her cause. Laura and I invite you to give the gift of reading by supporting the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. Thank you for your generosity. Enjoy the show, and may God bless you.
Hello, I'm Keith Garvin. Our thanks to President George W. Bush and Mrs. Laura Bush for sharing their welcome message on behalf of the Bush family. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Julie Baker Fink, President and CEO of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, as we bring you a celebration of reading.
Barbara Bush was fondly known as the First Lady of Literacy because she championed the literacy cause across our nation and right here in her adopted hometown of Houston for more than 3 decades. She believed that if you help a person to read, then their opportunities in life would be endless.
The Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation carries forth Mrs. Bush's legacy by helping more children and adults gain access to the literacy programs and resources they need to be successful in school, the workplace, and in life.
Research is clear. Children who reach 4th grade reading below standard are more likely to struggle academically and are 4 times more likely to eventually drop out of school. More than half of 3rd grade students in the Houston region did not meet reading standards on the most recent State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness. This is troubling and is a crisis that impacts the future of thousands of children and the well-being of our society and our economy. At the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, we are taking collective action to change lives and transform communities by helping more children achieve reading success. We are doing this using 4 research-backed strategies. First, through programs like Raising a Reader and Family Place Libraries, we're empowering families with tools and information they need to support healthy brain development and build a strong foundation for reading before their children enter kindergarten. Access to books at home is essential for children to practice their reading skills beyond the school walls and foster a lifelong love of books. That is why we are building home libraries for children through programs like My Home Library and Barbara's Book Boxes, in which children can select books for free to read, share, and keep. Children who are behind on grade level simply need more time and learning opportunities to catch up. We are investing in robust summer learning and after-school programs, including Camp Adventure and Curiosity Cruisers, which engage children in the hands-on learning activities, expose them to exciting careers, and provide them with books at no cost to families. Fourth, the foundation equips educators and volunteers with high-quality materials that support reading instruction and student learning. For example, we provide kindergarten and 1st grade teachers science of reading and action kits, filled with a curated collection of books and teaching tools that connect phonics with reading comprehension in a fun and effective way. Through a collective action approach and a focus on implementing strategies that research shows are effective in boosting reading achievement, we will continue to make a meaningful difference in the lives of Houston children, giving them a great start in life and placing them on a path for a bright future. In this hour, we will chat with 5 best-selling authors, including actor Kelsey Grammer and comedian Nate Bargatze. This year is special because June 8th marks what would have been Barbara Bush's 100th birthday.
And Mrs. Bush was well known for her strong but caring personality. Here to share a few fun memories of Mrs. Bush are former U.S. Secretary of State Dr. Condoleezza Rice and country music star Reba McEntire.
I'm so happy to join you for this celebration of reading and the celebration of our great friend and mentor, Mrs. Barbara Bush. Mrs. Bush was, of course, an original, and I have so many memories of what she taught me. Once when I was visiting at Kennebunkport, Laura Bush came down the stairs and she said, "Did you make your bed?" And I thought, well, no. I thought maybe somebody would do that. And she said, "Make your bed. Barbara will notice." So it taught me, even when you're visiting, make your bed. But more importantly, she taught me in many ways about being steely, being tough, but always being compassionate. And the one example that I would cite about that is that when Raisa Gorbachova came to visit in 1990 with President Gorbachev, Raisa had had a kind of reputation of being a little bit tough and a little bit difficult. She and Mrs. Bush were supposed to go to Wellesley to give a speech, and they were supposed to leave at 8 o'clock in the morning. We got the word that Mrs. Gorbachev couldn't do it until 8:30. Mrs. Bush said, "Fine, we'll leave at 8:30. Then she couldn't do it till 9 o'clock, and Mrs. Bush said, "Fine, we'll leave it at 9 o'clock. I imagined a frustrated Raisa Gorbachova finally saying, "Okay, she's got me. We left at 9:30. It was just fine." But Mrs. Bush was not going to be outdone. And that's the way that she was, steely and tough, but also willing to do what was necessary to get the job done.
I loved and adored Barbara Bush. She taught me so much. And the thing I loved a lot about Barbara is the really cool way that she got everybody to meet new people at a dinner party. She would take playing cards and cut them diagonally, put one half in a bowl, and the other half she would place around on top of the plates. And so when people went into the dining room, they'd pick out a card, half, and then go find its other half. And you'd be sitting with a stranger or somebody you knew, but it wasn't your partner or somebody you knew usually. And you got to go home with your significant other and say, "Well, what'd you learn tonight?" I love that about Barb. She was always coming up with new ways of doing things.
H.W. Brands has authored more than 30 books about American history that have spanned centuries and covered numerous national leaders and pivotal periods.
The two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist also serves as the Jack S. Blanton Senior Chair of History at the University of Texas at Austin. Sarah Beth Bush sat down with H.W. Brands to discuss his most recent book, America First, Roosevelt versus Lindbergh in the Shadow of War.
H.W. Brands, thank you so much for being here today, and congratulations on your continued success. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Awesome. Very excited to talk to you about your latest book, America First, which chronicles this fierce debate between President Roosevelt and Charles Lindbergh, the aviator and popular hero, over America's entry into World War II. Curious what your impetus for writing this book was, and also the significance of this particular debate with respect to America's on a global stage.
Well, so the reason I was inspired to write about this debate now is that we are actually in the middle of repeating that debate.
Right.
So this is debate over, narrowly speaking, whether the United States should enter the war against Germany in 1940 and 1941. In a broader sense, it was a debate about America's role in the world. Mm-hmm. Should the United States insist on taking a leadership position in the world, and therefore engage in war in Europe, if there's a war in Europe, and pay attention to what's going on elsewhere? Franklin Roosevelt was of the opinion that the United States should, but when he started out, during most of his presidency, that was a minority view in the United States. Americans felt that they had tried that in World War I and it hadn't worked out. Mm-hmm. And so they were determined in the 1930s not to repeat that mistake.
That's right.
But Roosevelt gradually tries to push the United States toward intervention. Charles Lindbergh, surprisingly, became the leading voice opposing that. I say surprisingly, he was not a politician. He didn't hold public office. He was a celebrity aviator. But he also knew a lot about airplanes. And as a result of that, he knew a lot about the military forces. And his father had been a member of Congress, and he felt a certain obligation to speak out. So when he felt that Roosevelt was moving the United States toward war, he felt that he had to speak out. And so I highlight the debate between these two men.
That's great. So the subtitle of America First is Roosevelt versus Lindbergh and the Shadow of War. Can you describe the controversy between these two towering figures and their respective influence on American sentiment at this time?
So the Shadow of War refers to a war going on in Europe. What we call World War II began in Europe in September 1939. And the focus of my book is on the period from then until Pearl Harbor, which essentially ends the debate. The United States will go to war because the United States has been attacked. And so the Shadow of War is a reference to this war, and the war in my book basically takes place off stage. So my two main characters are Roosevelt and Lindbergh, and they're carrying on this debate. But behind the debate is all the stuff that's going on in Europe. And as the war in Europe turns more and more against France first and then against Britain, Americans feel that the rise of Germany is a bad deal for the United States. And so increasingly, Roosevelt gains an audience for his view that, yes, the United States does need to take a leadership position, even in Europe.
And it's such a sticky transition, too, because like you said, his presidency, he was vocally saying that he was against joining the war, but then preparing people. How do you prepare someone or a whole nation for war when they don't really realize it?
So Roosevelt took small steps. So the first step was to repeal a law that forbade American manufacturers from selling weapons to belligerents. And Roosevelt made the argument that, well, the British need the weapons. The Germans already have their weapons. So this is actually just extending neutrality by letting the British buy weapons. But of course, the British buy weapons and then they borrow money to pay for the weapons. And so there's this connection that develops. And then when they run out of money, Roosevelt persuades Congress to give them the weapons. And so Americans are drawn more and more into this idea that the British are the good guys in this war and the Germans are the bad guys. And once Americans cross that emotional threshold, then it becomes a position where Roosevelt increasingly says, well, we can't let the British lose, no matter what the cost is.
Right. How does the America First movement of the 1930s and early 40s liken to more current political movements of America First today?
So when Donald Trump ran for president the first time in 2016, his campaign adopted the phrase America First. And it's a good slogan. It was a good slogan then, because who can complain if you're in the United States, complain about America first. It's unclear at least it's unclear to me, how thoroughly Donald Trump was versed in all the historical ramifications. I think he liked it. I'm sure that people around him understood this. And Donald Trump, during his first term as president, adopted some of the views of Charles Lindbergh and the America First Committee, for which Lindbergh spoke. And that was, we need to focus on the United States first and not get distracted, not get drawn into other people's wars. And when Donald Trump, for example, opposed American aid to Ukraine after the war between Russia and Ukraine broke out, well, that was clearly in line of Charles Lindbergh saying, if we start sending aid to Britain, then we're going to get sucked into the war on Britain's side. So I saw this developing while Trump was president the first time around, and then I had a hunch after he left office that he'd probably be the candidate again, and this debate would come up. So I thought, okay, well, now's the time let's take a look at this earlier debate and see what it tells us about the debate that's going on today.
Right. History always repeats itself, not necessarily in the same way, but
Yeah. I mean, there are aspects of it that recur. I mean, one of the things that happens is that the context changes. So the war in Ukraine by Russia. Russia isn't Nazi Germany, and Ukraine isn't Poland, but there are similarities and there are echoes, certainly.
Obviously, Lindbergh lost the debate because America joined World War II. Curious your thoughts around how that same debate, so U.S. either going to war or remaining neutral, has been evidenced in more recent affairs, as you just kind of spoke to.
Well, so when Lindbergh lost the debate, his side not only lost the debate, but they were utterly discredited in the minds of most Americans because they had been on the wrong side of what seemed to be history. And so for about 75 years afterwards, if you could call somebody an isolationist, that was the term with which Lindbergh and his fellow thinkers were labeled. If you called somebody an isolationist, it was to impugn their patriotism. They were idiots, they were ignorant, and that would end a debate. So if you say we should do this and I say you're an isolationist, then you had to shut up. And so the interventionists, the other side, they carried the day. And that lasted for, well, essentially until Donald Trump became president, because he was the first president to challenge that view that the United States must remain the leader of the world on the terms that were established during Roosevelt's time. So The debate has been rekindled, I mean, very large part because Donald Trump got elected again in 2024, and he's taken a very different position. So I'm not sure that there are any direct connections between the earlier debate and now, but the whole idea, I mean, as I say, the underlying question is, does the United States need to be, is it in the interest of the United States to be essentially the leader of the world? Mm-hmm. And reasonable people can take different views on this. The debate was held earlier, good debate. We're having a new debate today. So some of the things that we learned back then, I think, are applicable today.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Brands. We really appreciate it, and thank you for continuing to inform and inspire and educate us, and we can't wait to see what chapter of history you will illuminate next.
Okay, very
good. Thank you.
Phillips 66 is a longtime supporter of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and our mission. We are grateful to have them once again as our title sponsor of A Celebration of Reading.
Phillips 66 is an exemplary corporate partner and a point of light in service to our community.
At Phillips 66, we create purposeful partnerships that identify key solutions to society's greatest challenges, inspire action, and improve lives. Literacy is undoubtedly central to individual achievement and our economic future. That's why we're proud to partner with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation to make an impact in the communities we serve. Our employees enjoy taking part in volunteer opportunities provided by the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, and the literacy programs we support are high quality and impactful. Together, we're working to drive educational equity and foster a love for reading among children and families.
Our next author is an Emmy and Golden Globe winning actor, producer, and director with a career spanning over 3 decades in television, film, and theater.
He's globally known for his iconic portrayal of Dr. Frasier Crane, a role he played across Cheers, Frasier, and Wings for over 20 years. I had an opportunity to speak with Kelsey Grammer about literacy. Here's what he had to say.
Literacy. You can't get there without knowing how to read. You can't actually make your life come to fruition, at least the one you dream about, unless you know how to read. Somebody said it quite simply to me. We were talking about my children, my latest kids, about how, well, the first couple of years you learn how to read, and then for the rest of your life you read to learn. And I think that's exactly true. Literacy was probably the greatest gift I ever got, to learn how to read, to discover new ideas, new worlds. I mean, I'm an actor. I live in my imagination, but the imagination that you can access through the language, it's endless. I tend to try to read some of the classics, at least, kind of on a bit of a loop. I haven't gone back and tried to read War and Peace in some time, but I was thinking about revisiting Jules Verne's books, actually, because of my kids. I mean, I've got a 12, 10, and 8. And that was around when that was like really the wheelhouse for me, was the Verne books then, And I went to the point where I did a Captain Nemo impression of James Mason on Saturday Night Live 30 years ago, whenever it was. It was really a dynamic memory for me.
And you have a new book coming out?
Yes, Karen, about my sister. I hope it's moving. I mean, it certainly moved me, and certainly I wept and wept and laughed and laughed. So it's got a little of everything in it. I think it's important, and what was important about writing it was to remember how much laughter there was and how much goodness there was between us. She died when she was 18, but I had those 18 years with her, and they were wonderful. I had dinner with, sitting beside Barbara Bush, the First Lady, when her son was in office. It was kind of funny. And that was the time she turned to me and said, I married the first boy I ever kissed. That's one of the sweetest things I ever heard. Now, I've repeated that story to a few people who said, well, that's kind of pathetic, which is horrible. But others think it's romantic. Others think it's kind of sad. But I think it's lovely.
She would appreciate that you're laughing about it, because one thing I know she loved is to make people
Well, she did laugh a lot that night, I remember. We had a pretty good time. There was Prince Charles and Camilla were there at the White House. It was a pretty funny evening. A lot of things have happened since.
With more than 3 million books in print, Victoria Christopher Murray is one of our country's top African-American contemporary authors.
She has written 30 novels, including New York Times instant bestseller, The Personal Librarian, one of my personal favorites, which she co-authored with Marie Benedict. Ashley Bush Lefebvre met with Victoria to discuss her most recent book, Harlem Rhapsody.
I'm so excited to be here with you, Victoria.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to talk about your book, Harlem Rhapsody.
Yes.
And Harlem Rhapsody takes place in the early 1900s during the Harlem Renaissance, an important period in history. And I just wanted you to share a little bit about the story and how you discovered Jessie Redmond Faucett, the main character in the book. And what was the seed for this book? Yeah.
So it was interesting because this is my third historical novel, but it's the first one that I've written without my co-author, Marie Benedict. So we wrote The Personal Librarian, The First Lady, so I had a little bit of history and lessons on how to do historical fiction. And when I decided to do a solo project, I was looking for someone who was unknown, but I didn't know who I was looking for. So I was thinking about the time periods that I wanted to write, and I love the 20s, the Gilded Age, and then I love the 60s. So I began to look for women in those 2 decades, and I kind of bumped into the Harlem Renaissance by saying, what was going on in the 20s in New York? And I found the Harlem Renaissance, and then I said, okay, that's a perfect thing for me, a writer. So I Googled, never used Google for research, but I Googled just women of the Harlem Renaissance. And what came up was Langston Hughes, County Cullen. I was like, they're not women. What is this? But Langston Hughes had a quote that he said, Jessie Redmond Faucett was the midwife of the Harlem Renaissance. And from there, I started searching her name. It took me about a half an hour to say, this is the woman I want to write about.
Wow. So it was all from a Google quote, from a quote that popped up.
It was just from a quote.
So she's, yeah, you had never, that's what I was going to say, have you ever heard of her?
The thing that's so crazy about me, I've been writing now for 28 years, and the woman who, the face that should come up with the words Harlem Renaissance should be Jessie Redmond Faucett. Because this woman discovered every single Harlem Renaissance writer. And if you have a favorite, Langston Hughes, County Cullen, Gwendolyn Bennett, Jean Toomer, if you have a favorite Harlem Renaissance writer, she discovered them. And when I say she discovered them, she found them when they were teenagers. Langston Hughes was 17 years old. Before they were legends, we know them as legends. She discovered them before they wrote their first pieces.
That's insane. Yeah,
Isn't
with the
that
Brownies
insane?
book, right? Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, totally insane. That's crazy.
Well, I know you were just touching on that, but can you tell us a little bit about Jessie Redmond Faucett and the role that she played? You know, how did she play? What role? How did she shape the Harlem Renaissance?
So I like to say that she was a woman of firsts. She was the woman she was the first black woman, young girl, to graduate from the Philadelphia High School for Girls, the first black woman to graduate from Cornell University, the first black woman to have a Phi Beta Kappa, and then she became the first and the only, but the first literary editor of the Crisis magazine, which was the preeminent magazine for the NAACP at the time. And it was the only major magazine that talked about black people in America. And so she became the literary editor, the person to seek and find literary talent. And that's what she did. She found County Cullen in church. She found Langston Hughes through a letter he was sending to send his high school picture into the Crisis. And she just turned them into the legend. So when I say discovered, she edited them, mentored them, and published them before anyone else.
Jessie has an affair with her boss.
Oh, I know. I know.
W.E.B. Du Bois. And can you share what was going through your mind when you discovered their affair during your research?
Yeah.
And the significance the affair had on the Harlem Renaissance?
Yeah. So when I discovered the affair, I was like, really? Like, just shoot me now. I did not want that to be part of the story. But the affair was so important because you just asked a good question. You could say the Harlem Renaissance may have never happened without the affair between W.E.B. Du Bois, who was the editor of the Crisis magazine and the founder. That the Harlem Renaissance may have never happened because he only brought Jessie to New York to be with him. And she turned it into a movement. It's interesting how important their affair was to her writing. Mm-hmm. She wrote the very first novel ever written about the black middle class, about college-educated black people. It was only 50 years, so it wasn't something that had been done. And so she was not only discovering these writers, but she was setting in motion, like the literary canon we have today, she was the one that started the foundation.
So your books, The Personal Librarian, The First Ladies, and now Harlem Rhapsody, are all historical fiction novels based on very strong female women in history. What inspires you to find these women? And why is it important to tell these stories?
And I think the reason I look for them is because they're hidden. These are important women. They've done important things that we live on today. We're standing on the shoulders of all of their accomplishments in the 3 books that I wrote. And what I realized, and the importance of this for me, is that a history that's untold is a history that can be erased. These were women who didn't get their flowers when they were alive and when they were doing all of these accomplishments and having all of these achievements. And so I really do. I really want them to have their flowers now. I want to celebrate these people. I would not be writing all of these novels if it had not been for Jessie Redmond Fawcett.
I guess from your process, you'll find like a period that you're really interested in.
Yes, that's what I do. I start with the period first.
Okay.
And so with this book, I wanted either the 20s or the 60s, only because of those are 2 time periods that really interest me. And it's because it's more than the character for me, it's the time period. And so one of the things I know people said they enjoyed about Harlem Rhapsody is that they're able to feel like they're in the 1920s and they feel like they're in Harlem.
Yeah.
And the 1960s would be the same thing with the music and the dress and everything that was going on in the country. So I look for the time period and then find the women.
And did you go, when you were writing this book, did you have any research trips or what?
Yes, I spent about 5 weeks in Harlem.
Okay.
I lived there.
Oh,
I
wow.
wanted to immerse myself in the kind of atmosphere she was in even 100 years ago. And then every day, like it was my job, well, it was my job, I went to the Schomburg Research Library, which is the library in the book. It's the Library of the Harlem Renaissance. And so it's probably the preeminent place for everything Black American that you can find in there.
Neat.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you,
chatting
Ashley.
with me.
Thank you so much.
And for being here, too.
I'm excited to be here, very excited.
To commemorate Barbara Bush's 100th birthday, iconic jeweler Kenneth J. Lane has designed this gorgeous limited edition blue butterfly pen. The limited edition pen features a gemstone body with beautiful wings of stained glass blue hues and rhinestones. You can own this timeless piece of history for just $100. Proceeds from the pen will provide 20 new books for underserved children and support the mission of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. Don't miss your chance to own this one-of-a-kind commemorative piece honoring the First Lady of Literacy, Barbara Bush, while making a difference in the lives of Houston children. Visit the link below or scan the QR code to buy your pen.
Jean Becker was the former chief of staff for President George H.W. Bush, and she worked very closely with First Lady Barbara Bush.
Jean recently sat down with 2 generations of the Bush family. Neil Bush, son of President and Mrs. Bush, and co-founder of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, and his son Pierce Bush to discuss literacy, family, and the legacy of Barbara Bush.
I am so excited today to get to put my reporter's hat back on. I was a reporter for 10 years, and so when I was asked to interview the 2 of you about literacy, about your mother and your grandmother, I said, absolutely. I have questions I've been wanting to ask for years.
Oh, yeah.
But Neil, we're approaching your mom's, what would have been your mom's 100th birthday. And she's beloved all over the country and known, of course, for being the mother of literacy. What do you think she would think today about what's going on with her Literacy Foundation?
You know, I think Mom would be extremely proud that the foundation she started here in Houston to address Houston's literacy crisis is thriving. She left an amazing legacy. She passed away 7 years ago, and the leadership of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation continues to raise the critical resources needed to address the crisis through programs. For example, we started the My Home Library program, which has given over 1 million books to kids in public schools that have never had a home library. They get to pick their very own books, and it's been a terrifically successful program. We have other programmatic activities, the Curiosity Cruiser. We have a Women's Ladies for Literacy Guild. We have a Young Professionals group. We have lots of activity. And we also put invest money into programs that are on the ground dealing with the literacy crisis in Houston. I'm extremely proud to be the chairman of the organization, and I know Mom is looking down on the great work being done with great pride that her legacy lives on in Houston.
She would be so proud of you in particular and everything that you're doing. Why do you think she picked literacy of all the things she could have picked to be her number one cause?
First of all, I think she really wanted to use her platform as First Lady for a cause. So in thinking about what makes the biggest difference in the lives of people, she came to the conclusion that literacy does, and she's 100% right. If you can't read at an age-appropriate level, how can you succeed in school, or how can you reach your fullest God-given potential in life? And so she understood that literacy was a critical issue. I happen to think that because I was a struggling dyslexic kid and she saw me struggle through school, I had terrible grades, but she kept me uplifted, but she had a kind of an intrinsic understanding of the importance of literacy, having seen me struggle through it. Mm-hmm. She was a great mom and never let me down and never let me feel down. But I have a feeling that might have been part of the reason she chose literacy.
And I know that she also be very proud of you, Pierce. Before I grill you about your memories of your Ganny reading to you and your cousins, I would love you to just talk about what you're doing right now with your life.
I've been the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters for a decade, if you can believe it, here, an agency that covers obviously Houston, but DFW, it's actually the largest Big Brothers Big Sisters affiliate agency in the country. And it's just such an incredible mission. Obviously part of why I've dedicated so much of my career to it is I signed up as a volunteer and met another volunteer whose name is now Sarah Beth Bush. And we have 2 young kids. We're still very close with our littles who we signed up to help. But it's just an amazing mission. It brings out the best of Houstonians, just like Ganny's literacy cause. So constantly get to be surrounded with so many great people who want to give of themselves to help a child reach their God-given potential. It's an incredible mission. So thank you, Gene, for that.
You're both helping make this world a better place to live. I don't want to embarrass you, but that's true. So let's go back in your memories.
Yes.
The Bush grandkids were probably read to more than any other grandchildren in the history of the world because your grandmother loved reading to all. Can you just share some of your early memories of when she read to you, your sisters, your cousins? Tell us some stories.
My grandparents and my dad can attest to this, did an incredible job of incorporating the entire family, the entire extended family into the special moments. So, I was 2.5 when my grandfather became president. And so my earliest memories are of going to the White House and of course Camp David for Christmas, which was just so magical looking back and thinking about those times now. And almost every picture of, I just went back and looked at one of the scrapbooks, but every picture that we have with our grandmothers, her, and a cohort of my cousins and I sitting on the floor reading. And mind you, she was First Lady at the time. When we got older, she was, my cousins lovingly called her the enforcer, Gene.
Yes.
Part of that was simply because... Yes, she was, as you know. And we're all better because of it. All of us on this couch, I think, could raise our hand and say that. But one of the things she enforced most was, did you do your summer reading? When you're a kid and you're in grade school, you're given a list of books and you have to go and finish that. She would not accept you, for example, watching the movie on the book. She wanted you to actually read the book. And she made sure that all of her grandkids, when they were in her purview, followed the rules and did their work. And, I now love to read. And maybe that wouldn't have been the case if it wasn't Ganny, what we call my grandmother. because of her leadership on the subject.
We need literacy more than ever. I was going to ask both of you to reveal something about your mother, grandmother that would shock everyone. And I love the point you made. She was such a transparent person. There really is nothing we don't know about Barbara Bush. Y'all were hilarious when we were talking about the green room.
She was impossible to keep a secret from her, with her, put it that way.
That would be true.
Yeah, and her feelings were well known. She didn't she didn't hide them. And people loved that frankness and her honesty. And she was so authentic and so amazing. She's very loving, deeply caring.
Yes.
But she had a funny side to her where, you never knew what she was going to say.
It was refreshing, I mean, really, and I can say this: she was in private as she was in public.
Yeah.
And there's something to that in life. In the era where you see people who go to great lengths to present themselves in a certain way, I think Barbara Bush's advice would be to just be yourself.
Yeah.
And she was definitely herself. I have like 15 more questions, but I think we have to end the interview. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Bish.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
The Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation depends on local supporters. We would like to share a message from Woodside Energy, our presenting sponsor for this year's A Celebration of Reading.
At Woodside Energy, building positive social and economic outcomes in the communities where we live and work is at the heart of our company's social contribution efforts. Investing in programs that help our city's youngest and most vulnerable children learn how to read is a key strategy to ensure a thriving workforce and a vibrant society now and for generations to come. Woodside Energy is proud to be the presenting sponsor of this year's A Celebration of Reading and play an important role in advancing Barbara Bush's vision of literacy for all.
Our next author is a Houstonian and New York Times bestseller of 15 books, 2 of which have been adapted into movies.
KPRC2's Derek Shore caught up with Katherine Center to discuss her latest romantic comedy, The Love Haters, and inspiration behind her writing.
Katherine, it's so nice to meet you.
It's so great to be here.
It really is an honor. You're not just a New York Times best-selling author. I mean, your books are oftentimes instantly at the top of the bestsellers list. You come from what you describe as a book family. Your uncle owned a bookstore, Dietering Bookstore, is that right?
Dietering Book Gallery, yeah.
And this was something that you sort of grew up wanting to do, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up around books. My parents were both huge readers. My mom has a master's in library science from UT. She's a librarian. But I really got started writing, not so much because I thought books were cool, although I did, that was in the background. I got started writing in the 6th grade out of misery because I was very, very dorky in the 6th grade and I was very miserable. And I had 2 best friends who were also dorky and also miserable. And we somehow got this idea that we should write novels about the 1980s boy band Duran Duran.
Ooh, good choice.
We would sort of suffer through the school week, writing chapters in our novels, and then on the weekends we would get together and have sleepovers, and we would put on our PJs and jump into somebody's bed and open up our novels and read them to each other in installments. And that's really the thing that got me hooked on stories.
I love this story because it underscores this idea that books are an escape for people. It's a way for people to relax, to be happy, to look forward to something. Your books have an overarching theme of positivity. And your very first book was published in 2007, is that right?
Yes.
You told me during, before this interview, you called yourself the great-grandmother of the rom-com.
Yeah, I've been around a long time writing rom-coms.
2007 was not that long ago. But do you think that is the reason why readers keep coming back to your books? Because there is such a positive vibe.
Yeah, I mean, rom-coms and romance novels, any kind of happy love story, not a tragic Romeo and Juliet situation, but a happy love story is going to be incredibly nourishing. Like, they're especially nourishing compared to other genres. And part of the reason for that is that you have this guaranteed happily ever after, right? No matter what happens, even if the 2 leads are thrown into a snake pit by pirates, by the time you get to the end of the story, they are going to overcome all their internal and external obstacles, figure it out, right, and fall madly in love. You will get that. You're constitutionally guaranteed a happy ending when you read a romance novel. And so what that allows you to do when you're reading is have a very particular, very nourishing emotional experience of moving through that story, because you're looking forward to that good thing that's waiting for you at the end. And there's actually a term for this in psychology. It's called positively valenced anticipation. So all stories run on anticipation and curiosity. That's what keeps you turning the pages, is like, what's gonna happen next? You're sort of picking up the clues that the authors dropped for you, and you're trying to anticipate, like, what does that mean? Like, you know, and a lot of the clues that you're picking up are sort of dark. You know, it's like, that man's gonna get sick, or that kid's gonna go to jail. But with romance novels, the clues the writer is writing for you are like happy clues, right? Things to look forward to, clues of good things up ahead. It's like, you know, a handhold. You know, so those things create this feeling of moving towards something good. Not just something good, something blissful, right? And that feeling of having something that matters to look forward to is a very special feeling that's kind of hard to get in real life, but it's actually, it's like a version of hope. So I think people come back to romance novels over and over because they are so nourishing and so hopeful and so uplifting.
And relatable. We all want something to look forward to,
I do.
right?
Yeah.
Love haters. I'm assuming you're talking about your two main characters, Katie and Cole, who have both been jilted.
Yes. The Love Haters is a story about a woman video producer who gets a gig to go make a video promo of a U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer. And these are the guys who jump out of helicopters into the ocean and rescue people and hoist them back up on cables. And she really, really wants this job. She needs this job. She's kind of in danger of getting fired. So she accepts the job even though she cannot actually swim. And she hasn't owned a bathing suit since the 8th grade. So she kind of gets thrown onto this mission to go to Key West and do all of these things that are completely outside of her comfort zone. And in the process, she meets this lovely rescue swimmer who is a very, very, very good-hearted person.
That's a great tease.
Yeah, it's a really fun story. And so whenever I'm writing stories, I'm kind of looking around in the world for things that are inspiring and things that are uplifting that I can work into the story or center the story around. And when I was starting to think about what to write for this book, my husband suggested rescue swimmers. And I have to say, I hadn't really known very much about the Coast Guard before that, but he said, if you really want to write about courage and altruism, you need to learn about this job, because these guys are doing that every day. They're putting their lives on the line to pull people out of the ocean.
Speaking of your husband, Gordon, you dedicated this book to him, and I understand he frequently goes out with you when you're doing a book tour.
He does.
And your mother does as well.
My mother does too.
Talk to me about what they have both made of your overwhelming success.
They're delighted. I think my mom always thought I would get there. You know, my career has been sort of the opposite of an overnight success. You know, like I have very, very, very slowly over almost 20 years, just sort of book club by book club, reader by reader, found the people who are going to like the sort of particular thing that I do, which is kind of its own category because they're not anything that's already out there. They're sort of these bittersweet comedies. They're rom-coms, but they have this sort of other, more literary side to them where the characters really have to struggle and sort of face some really hard things. So they're sort of half women's fiction, which is slightly more literary, and half romance. And there's not really a lot of that out there, so they're kind of their own thing, and it takes a little while to find the people who are going to like that. Not everybody wants that. So it's been a very long journey, and I've had lots and lots of opportunities for self-doubt and disappointment, and you know, we call them opportunities for personal growth, you know, when things don't go your way and you're just struggling and it's not looking like anything's going to be easy. And through it all, both of those two people, my mom and my husband, just kind of never doubted that it was somehow going to work out, you know. I doubted it all the time. I kept trying to quit, but they both thought it's going to happen. So I'm very grateful to them. They've been amazing.
It's just such an honor to meet you. I had no idea you were from Houston, by the way. Yeah. I didn't realize like this big time author was right here living down the road.
Yeah, I grew up here. This is my hometown.
Well, Houston is proud to call you, to claim you as our own, and we can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. It was such a treat to be here.
Early literacy is a powerful predictor of future success. In fact, research is clear that children who read at or above level by the end of the 3rd grade are more likely to graduate high school on time, earn a college degree, and secure higher paying jobs.
Yeah, unfortunately, more than half of 3rd graders in the greater Houston area did not meet minimum reading standards on the 2024 State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness. These children are 4 times more likely to eventually drop out of school, but the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation is stepping up to help.
Our Curiosity Cruisers are super libraries on wheels, bringing free books and educational programs to children in underserved areas across Houston.
Hey everybody, we're the Curiosity Cruiser. Who likes books? Me. All right, we've got plenty of them. Come on, buddy. You want that one?
The children we served at Bayland Community Center in the Gulfton-Sharpstown neighborhood are thrilled each time the Curiosity Cruiser mobile library and staff show up for weekly after-school STEM and reading activities. They've been able to learn about coding, engineering, and physics this semester.
My favorite thing that I did with the Curiosity Cruiser was when we used the robots because we were able to code them.
The fleet of 4 Curiosity Cruisers, along with the technology, books, and hands-on learning activities, has enabled us to significantly expand our outreach programming to thousands more children each year, right in their very own neighborhoods. Our goal is to provide children with extended learning opportunities beyond the school walls. We offer more than 25 different STEM activities connected to literature to broaden their imaginations about possible careers and inspire them to become lovers of books and reading.
What I want to be when I grow up is a scientist, and the reason why I want to be a scientist is because I want to help find different cures for cancer.
The children and families we serve may not have the financial resources to purchase books. So it's meaningful when the children have the opportunity to board the Curiosity Cruiser at the end of each session to choose a free book to read, share, love, and keep.
I like reading because it lets me learn more and it improves my reading skills. I do like reading a lot. I just imagine me just being one of the characters.
Since our partnership with the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and the Ladies for Literacy Guild began in 2018, more than 100,000 books have been gifted to children, and thousands have participated in weekly STEM plus reading activities through the Curiosity Cruiser initiative.
I picked the Wimpy Kid because it's like if he's telling his day and how problems happen and how he can resolve them. I can't wait to read it and build my very own home library.
Thanks for helping us dream big!
Nate Bargatze is a Grammy-nominated stand-up comedian selling out shows and breaking venue attendance records on his comedy tours. He has appeared on many late-night television shows, hosted several stand-up comedy specials on Netflix, and will MC this year's Emmy Awards.
His 2025 world tour, Nate Bargatze, Big Dumb Eyes, launched in March and is centered on his first book, Big Dumb Eyes, Stories from a Simpler Mind. I sat down with Nate to discuss his career and family. Well, first and foremost, congratulations on your incredible success. Seems like you've been everywhere. You've had several Netflix series. Congrats on the Grammy nomination as well for The Greatest American. I mean, did you ever imagine such incredible success?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm just kind of plugging along, doing stand-up. And so, I don't think I could ever imagine that it would have went where it went. So now, I'm kind of just along for the ride, seeing where it takes me.
Well, now you have a new book.
Now I have a book.
I mean, a book coming out. I won't ask you how the title came about.
Yeah, Big Dumb Eyes. Because my eyes are, because I do have big, because people talk to me because they see my eyes. Our family has a lot of big eyes. And when you have big eyes, people they talk to you a little easier.
Well, most authors, sometimes get upset because they come up with a title and then the editor changes it. So I'm Did you come up with the title, or did they come up with the title with you?
I did. My new stand-up tour is also called Big Dumb Eyes. But I think we named the book that first, and then it was just kind of like, you know what, this is like perfect. We'll just do this, and it was easy. A lot of people think, because I'll say Big Dumb Eyes, which sounds like I'm saying Big Demise, which would be just a completely different. We're the opposite book of that.
Well, we're really, as a literacy organization, trying to tell people, that teach people the difference between Big Dumb Eyes and Big Demise.
Yes,
so thank
exactly.
you for helping to make that point.
You know, there we go.
Really appreciate that. You know, I've read your book. I've laughed out loud several times. I love the fact that it's a compilation of stories from your childhood and from your family. You know, how did you kind of curate the collection of stories that are in your book?
When you tell stories on stage, they have to be so tight. Like, you got to kind of get to it. You can't really tell the whole story. And so in a book, you get to kind of tell the whole story. So we got a couple stories from my stand-up, but then a lot of stories that, you know, just were stories that never really would have fit in a stand-up routine. And so you have to get them out and tell them in a book.
I love that you also had, you talked about Harper, your daughter, who's now 12.
12, yeah.
And your wife, Laura,
yes.
Who kind of helped play a role in here. Of course, they're featured through some of the humorous stories that you tell throughout your life. But can you kind of talk about the role, particularly of Harper, in helping to produce the book?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just her, I would let her proofread it, read it, see if something makes sense. She's already smarter than me, so to get her eyes on it, just to kind of be like, is this all making sense? So she would sit there with me, and you want to share these things. That's what I have her introduce me on my specials. Just to, you know, I want something for us to be doing something together, you know.
I love that. So you already had an editor, an in-home editor.
I did.
A 12-year-old. A 12-year-old at that.
Yeah.
So love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
You know, you started the Nateland Company in 2023. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what is your aim, you know, for Nateland Company, and what was the impetus for really you starting it?
Yeah, it's to make comedy, family-friendly comedy that everybody can go to. Not necessarily that you're making anything for kids, but I don't want you to ever have to make your kid leave the room, or, you know, or you're uncomfortable if you're watching it. When people come to my shows, it'll be 9-year-olds to grandparents. And I love that everybody can come together as a big family and do something. And I think, you know, there's, I know having a daughter is a lot less than you feel like you can go do and watch and enjoy. So that's the goal, is to make a lot of, you know, have a book that's, you know, just stuff to be funny and be entertainment, and then make some movies and just get it going, and, you know, build a whole little world that I want people to trust when they see Nateland, that we have the audience in mind.
Well, it's a great vision, and really appreciate, you know, you focusing on family. We love families, of course, and want everything to be family friendly. Staying on the line of family, we talked about your daughter and your wife, but in your book you also talk about your parents. And, you know, your dad was a professional clown and magician. Did he influence you in sort of going the comedy route?
Yeah, he did. So he always did comedy with his stuff. So when he was a clown, he was being funny, but in his magic was always comedy. So, you know, a lot of magicians, it's kind of straightforward, and there's not, as you know, it's not funny as much. And so he was always very funny in it, always made fun of him, you know, made fun of himself. So being around that was, I can see how much it played into my life now, more so than I think I realized at the time. The magic's a lot. You got to do a lot. So I was like, I'll just go straight to the comedy part.
Skip all of that, right?
Yeah, skip all the magic.
And just make people laugh.
Yeah, yeah.
So we appreciate that. You've launched your world tour. I've looked at the itinerary. God bless you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, talk a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve through your world tour, and what people should be able to expect.
I think people want to go out and do things, and like I said, like, there's not as much to go do that the whole family can come to. So I want people to come to the shows and just have a fun time, and I hope you can kind of turn your brain off and just relax and have fun, and either laugh at me or laugh with me. It doesn't matter. And you know, I love stand-up comedy. It's my passion. I love it so much. I love telling stories and figuring out stories to tell. So I'm excited just to go do it again.
Great. Well, I know everybody wants to see you because I've looked and several of the shows are already sold out.
Yeah,
I know your tour isn't coming to Houston, but we really appreciate you. Okay, I'm holding it to you.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
well we're going to hold you to that.
Just not this year, but it will come to Houston.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're holding it to you. But anyway, we're glad that you're here for Celebration of Reading. We appreciate you supporting the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, making our audience laugh and encourage them. We'll encourage them to read your book. We know you're going to be in Dallas in October. We won't want to talk about that other city, but we know some of your shows are sold out. But we're so
I'll be coming to Houston.
All right, we're holding you to it.
Yeah, I promise.
You heard that. We're going to end on that. We're going to close on that.
Yeah, perfect. I'll be there. 2026.
Thank you for joining us for a celebration of reading. And Julie, I know that the work that you were doing at the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation would make Mrs. Bush very, very proud.
Well, it's an extreme honor to carry forth her literacy legacy in her hometown. With everyone's help, we can get more books into the hands of children in need and expand our reach of programs to more families.
To learn more about the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation and how you can get involved, go to barbarabushhouston.org. And let's keep making a difference in honor of Mrs. Bush's 100th birthday.
To commemorate Barbara Bush's 100th birthday, iconic jeweler Kenneth J. Lane has designed this gorgeous limited edition blue butterfly pen. The limited edition pen features a gemstone body with beautiful wings of stained glass blue hues and rhinestones. You can own this timeless piece of history for just $100. Proceeds from the pen will provide 20 new books for underserved children and support the mission of the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation. Don't miss your chance to own this one-of-a-kind commemorative piece honoring the First Lady of Literacy, Barbara Bush, while making a difference in the lives of Houston children. Visit the link below or scan the QR code to buy your pen.